Am I the asshole for refusing to donate a kidney to my stepdad that raised me and paid for my college? I never imagined that one phone call from my mom would make me feel like the worst person alive for wanting to keep my own organs. That sounds dramatic, I know, but honestly, that's exactly how the last few weeks have felt. My stepdad is dying, or at least, that's how everyone in my family talks about it now. He's 56 years old and has severe kidney failure. The doctors told him he needs a transplant, and apparently things have gotten serious enough that everyone immediately switched into crisis mode. Testing family members, calling hospitals, talking about compatibility percentages and waiting lists and survival rates. And somehow, without anyone directly saying it at first, the entire situation slowly turned into this unspoken assumption that I would be the solution. I'm 27 years old, and I genuinely don't know if refusing to give someone a kidney automatically makes you a terrible human being. Because honestly, part of me feels unbelievably guilty. But another part of me feels deeply uncomfortable with how quickly everyone decided my body was now part of a family negotiation. The hardest part is that my stepdad is actually a good person, like genuinely good. If he had been abusive or cruel or absent, this would almost be easier emotionally. But he wasn't. He came into our lives when I was in high school. My biological father had been mostly out of the picture for years by then, and financially, things were rough. I knew they were rough even though my mom tried to hide it from me. I remember overhearing conversations about bills late at night, rent stress, credit cards, my mom crying quietly in the kitchen when she thought I was asleep. We weren't homeless or anything, but we were close enough to instability that I noticed. Then my stepdad showed up. At first, I didn't really know what to think of him. I was already old enough that I wasn't looking for a new dad. Honestly, I kind of hated that idea. I remember feeling weirdly defensive anytime people implied he would somehow replace my father. But over time, he earned my respect naturally. Not by forcing anything, not by trying too hard, just by consistently showing up. He helped around the house. He treated my mom well. He never pushed me to call him dad or tried to overstep boundaries. And honestly, I think that's part of why I ended up liking him so much. He didn't demand love. He just behaved like family until eventually he became family. One moment in particular has stayed with me for years. When he married my mom, he sat me down privately afterward and basically told me not to stress about college anymore. He said he'd help cover my tuition and living expenses so I could focus on building a future for myself. I genuinely think that conversation changed my life. Because up until then, college had always felt uncertain financially. And suddenly, someone was telling me, "You're going to be okay." I'll never forget that. And to his credit, he followed through completely. He paid for my tuition, helped with housing, books, food, everything. I graduated without debt largely because of him. So now here we are, years later, and suddenly everyone's acting like the bill has come due. That sounds harsh, but honestly, that's kind of how it feels. A few weeks ago, my mom called me crying and explained how bad his kidneys had gotten. I knew he'd had health issues before, but I didn't realize things had progressed this far. Apparently, dialysis isn't enough anymore, and doctors strongly recommend a transplant. At first, I just felt horrible for him. Then, my mom asked me to get tested, and honestly, the second she asked, my stomach dropped. Because I already knew what everyone wanted the answer to be. I think part of me hoped the entire problem would solve itself before I ever had to make a real decision. Maybe another donor would appear. Maybe I wouldn't be compatible. Maybe something else would happen. Anything. Because the truth is, the idea of organ donation terrifies me. And every time I admit that, I immediately feel selfish. People keep talking about kidney donation like it's no big deal because you can live with one kidney. But surgery is still surgery. Complications happen. People act like donating an organ is the moral equivalent of helping someone move apartments. It's not. It's a major medical procedure. And no matter how many reassuring statistics I read online, the thought of voluntarily removing one of my organs makes my entire body tense up. Still, despite the fear, I agreed to get tested. Partly because I love him, partly because I felt obligated, and partly because I think refusing to even check would have destroyed my relationship with my family instantly. The entire time I kept secretly hoping I wouldn't be compatible. I know that sounds awful, but it's true. Because if I wasn't compatible, then the decision would be made for me. No guilt, no pressure, no choosing between my fear and someone else's life. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. A few days later, I got the results. I was compatible. I remember staring at the doctor like maybe I had misheard him, because suddenly the hypothetical became real. Suddenly this wasn't some distant moral dilemma anymore. It was an actual possibility, and honestly, I panicked, not outwardly, but internally. My brain immediately started spiraling through every possible scenario. What if something goes wrong during surgery? What if I develop complications later? What if years from now I need my second kidney? What if I regret it? Then immediately afterward came another thought. What kind of person even thinks like this when someone they love is dying? That internal conflict has basically consumed my brain ever since. When I told my mom about the results, I specifically asked her not to tell anyone yet, specifically. I told her I needed time to process everything before the entire family started getting involved, and honestly, I really thought she understood. I wasn't even saying no at that point. I was genuinely still thinking about it, trying to process it, trying to decide whether I could emotionally handle it, trying to calm down enough to think clearly instead of reacting from panic. But apparently none of that mattered, because literally the next day my phone started exploding. Texts, calls, messages from relatives, people thanking me, praising me, talking like the decision had already been made. And honestly, I cannot fully explain how trapped that made me feel. Nobody even asked if I had decided yet. They just assumed, like my body had already become public family property, the second compatibility was confirmed. One aunt literally texted me, "Your stepdad always knew you'd do the right thing." And reading that honestly made me feel sick, because suddenly the entire family narrative became, good son donates kidney, and anything else automatically means betrayal. The pressure became overwhelming almost immediately. People started talking about when the surgery would happen instead of if. Relatives I barely speak to suddenly started acting emotional toward me. My mom kept saying things like, "Yulia, you're his best chance," or how he's done so much for us. And every single conversation carried this underlying implication that refusing would make me ungrateful forever. At some point, I realized I wasn't even thinking clearly anymore. I was just drowning in guilt, and honestly, that's exactly why I finally said no, at least for now. Because the more pressure everyone applied, the more defensive I became. I needed space to think, space to process, space to make a decision that felt voluntary instead of emotionally forced. But the second I said I wasn't doing it right now, everything exploded. My mom completely lost it, not sad, angry, like genuinely furious. She started calling me selfish, ungrateful, cold-hearted. At one point, she literally said, "If it weren't for him, we would have ended up on the streets." And honestly, part of me knows she's probably right. That's what makes this so painful, because she's not entirely wrong. My stepdad absolutely changed our lives financially. He gave me opportunities I probably never would have had otherwise. He treated me like his own son when he didn't have to. And now, when he needs something life-saving from me, I'm hesitating. How am I not supposed to feel horrible about that? But at the same time, I also resent the way everyone talks about this like it's morally simple. because the people pressuring me the hardest are conveniently all medically incompatible themselves. They don't actually have to make the decision. They get to stand safely outside the situation and judge me from a distance. Nobody's asking them to undergo major surgery. Nobody's asking them to permanently alter their body. Nobody's asking them to live the rest of their life with one kidney, only me. And somehow I'm supposed to immediately smile and say yes, or else become the villain of the family. That honestly leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Especially because my stepdad himself has been the calmest person in this entire situation. When I finally told him directly that I wasn't ready to do it, he didn't yell, didn't guilt trip me, didn't pressure me. He just quietly said he understood. And somehow that almost made it worse because I could hear the disappointment underneath his voice even though he tried to hide it. That conversation honestly destroyed me emotionally because I know he's scared. I know he's trying not to burden me. And I know part of him probably hoped I would say yes immediately, but at least he treated me like I still had a choice, unlike everyone else. Since then, the family dynamic has become unbelievably tense. Some relatives stopped talking to me entirely. Others keep sending passive-aggressive messages about sacrifice and family loyalty. One cousin posted some vague social media status about how real family shows up when it matters, which honestly felt pretty clearly directed at me. Meanwhile, I've basically been living inside my own head nonstop. Every day, I change my mind multiple times. Some mornings, I wake up thinking, of course I should do it. He helped raise me. He paid for my future. How could I not? Then, later that night, I start reading medical forums about complications and donor experiences, and suddenly I'm terrified all over again. I think people underestimate how psychologically intense this kind of decision becomes. Because no matter what I choose, I lose something. If I refuse, I'll probably carry guilt forever. And there's a real chance my relationship with my family never fully recovers. But if I agree while feeling pressured and terrified, I worry I'll end up resentful afterward. Especially because, right now, I honestly don't feel like I'm making a free choice. I feel cornered. And maybe that's selfish. Maybe most good people would just do it immediately, without hesitation. I genuinely don't know anymore. That's part of why this situation has messed with my head so badly. Because I keep wondering what kind of person fear makes me. If this were my mother needing a kidney, would I hesitate this much? If it were my child someday, would fear matter at all? And if the answer changes depending on the relationship, what does that say about how I truly view my stepdad deep down? That thought honestly devastates me, because despite everything, I do love him. Maybe not exactly the same way I'd love a biological parent, but genuinely, deeply. He mattered enormously in my life. And I think part of why I'm struggling so much is because I know there's no emotionally painless answer here. No matter what I choose, someone gets hurt. Lately, I've also started feeling angry about something I'm ashamed to admit. I'm angry that everyone suddenly remembers what he's done for me only in the context of repayment. Because growing up, his love never felt transactional. He never acted like helping me financially created a debt. He helped because he wanted to. At least, that's what I believed. But now, the way everyone talks about it makes it sound like my education was basically a long-term investment waiting for payoff. And honestly, that hurts. Because I don't want my relationship with him reduced to some moral accounting system where college tuition gets exchanged for body parts. That feels ugly, and maybe unfair. But it's how this entire situation has started feeling emotionally. At the same time, I also understand why people are emotional. This isn't abstract to them. This is life and death. When someone you love is sick, fear makes people desperate. Desperate people become manipulative, sometimes without even realizing it. I know my mom is terrified. I know she's probably imagining losing her husband. I know she's angry because, from her perspective, there's a possible solution standing right in front of her, refusing to act. If I were in her position, maybe I'd feel the same way. But understanding someone's emotions doesn't automatically erase your own. And right now, my emotions are a complete mess. Some friends think I'm absolutely doing the right thing by refusing. Others think I'm morally insane for even hesitating. One friend flat out told me, if someone paid for my entire future and then needed a kidney, I wouldn't even think twice. And honestly, hearing that made me feel even worse, because I have thought twice. More than twice. I've thought about this every waking moment for days. I still don't know what I'm going to do. That's the truth. Despite everything, there's still a very real chance I change my mind. The surgery isn't tomorrow. There's still time. And part of me keeps wondering whether fear is something I should overcome rather than obey. But another part of me thinks bodily autonomy has to matter even when guilt is involved. Otherwise, consent stops meaning anything. I think that's the part people struggle with most. They hear kidney donation and emotionally translate it into, would you save someone you love? But the reality is much messier than that. Because it's not a magical risk-free act. It's permanent, physical, psychological. And once it's done, there's no undo button. Right now, I honestly feel trapped between gratitude, fear, guilt, obligation, resentment, and love all at the same time. And I genuinely don't know which emotion is supposed to win.